Do you know that there are 19 processes in Scrum within 5 phases? In this video, I'm going to talk about these processes and I'm going to show you where in the Scrum flow these processes happen. Okay, let's start. So the very first process in Scrum is create project vision. In this process, the project business case is reviewed to create a project vision statement that will serve as the inspiration and provide focus on the entire project. The project vision statement will serve as a guide for every decision. Without the vision, the solution may evolve and evolve but ends up not achieving the main purpose. Example, if the company wants to create a mobile app and the vision is to build a community within the company for employees, if one department will request to include a module in the mobile app where employees can file their loans, we can ask, is adding this module can help to add or can help to achieve the vision of the app. The module is important but maybe not relevant and it can be another application. The next process is identify Scrum Master and stakeholders. So once there's already a go signal for the project, the Scrum Master will be identified and the stakeholders who will be part of the brainstorming, requirements gathering, who will be validate the application. And the next process is form a Scrum team. So picking the right people with the right skills for the project. The next process is develop epics. And in developing epics, the project vision statement will serve as the basis for the epics. And what is epic? Epic is a large body of work that can be broken down into number of smaller stories. So example, ability to post is epic. And then it can be broken down into user stories like posting of text, another user story for posting of picture, another user story for posting of video. So that is breaking down of the epics, which is part of the process 5, which is create prioritize product backlog. So in this process, epics are refined and broken down into user stories. Then backlogs will be prioritized to create a prioritized backlog. The basis of the prioritization will be business value, risk, and dependencies. Then the next process, once we already have the prioritized product backlog, is the release planning. So this is the last process in initiate phase. And in this process, the Scrum core team reviews the prioritized backlog to develop a release planning schedule, which is a phase deployment schedule. Length of sprint is also determined in this process. It's not necessary that every sprint there will be a release. It can be one release cover 2 sprints of work. Okay. So these are the 6 processes in the initiate phase. And in the Scrum flow, you can see that this is the part of these 6 processes. After the initiate phase is the plan and estimate. So the first process on the plan and estimate is the creation of user stories. So the product owner or the business analyst create the user stories, and as much as possible, the acceptance criteria should be clear prior to the sprint planning, as they will be the basis for the estimation. Then once the user stories are already created, then the team can now do the sprint planning. So the next 5 processes that we are going to go through are the processes that are being done in the sprint planning. So part of it would be the estimation of the user stories by story points usually. So what will happens here is the product owner explains or clarifies the user stories to Scrum Master and Scrum team so that they can estimate the effort needed. Once the estimation is done, the team will now have the user stories that they can commit for the sprint. So based on the capacity or the velocity of the team. So example, the capacity of the team is 200 points. So the top user stories that are estimated that sums up as 200 points will be part of the sprint. So prior to the sprint planning, the product owner already sorted or sort out the user stories according to the prioritization. Okay. So next would be identifying the task of the user stories. So this is what the team will do for the user stories to be completed. Example, creation of UI, back-end coding, updating of database are tasks of a user story. So after the task identification would be the estimation of tasks. But usually this is being skipped if the team is just using the story points for the monitoring. So this will not be the hours or estimation of tasks by hours will not be relevant anymore. So usually this is not being done by the team. Then the next would be the creation of the sprint backlog. So basically this is just simply um, creating the sprint backlog or preparing the sprint board for the sprint. Okay. So these are the plan and estimate phase, and in the Scrum flow, as you can see, they are actually in the sprint planning. After the plan and estimate phase would be the implement phase, and it starts with the create deliverables. So this is where the actual development happens and the testing. The Scrum board is being used to track the progress of the team. Okay. So during the entire duration of the sprint, there will be daily stand-up meeting. So this is usually time box for 15 minutes. Literally should be standing up so that it will not take longer. So this is to update each other of the progress of what have been completed after the meeting yesterday and what we'll be doing after the meeting today. And very important to raise if there are impediments or blockers so that Scrum Master can take action to remove them as they can be risk for the completion of the committed user stories. Then the next process would be the groom prioritized product backlog. So in this process, the prioritized product backlog is continuously updated or refined and maintained by the product owner or the business analyst so that they will be ready for the next sprint. So that is the implement phase, and after the implement phase or the actual development and testing of user stories, what's next would be the sprint review or demonstrate and validate sprint. In this process, the Scrum team demonstrates the sprint deliverables to the product owner and relevant stakeholders in a sprint review meeting. The product owner may accept or reject based on if the acceptance criteria was met. Only the product owner can say if the user story is done. Any backlog that are not accepted will be spilled over to the next sprint. And then at the end of the sprint would be the sprint retrospective. So in the sprint retrospect, the team discussed the lessons learned throughout the sprint, if what went right, what went wrong, and actionable improvements that can be implemented in the future sprint. So these are the review and retrospect phase. After the review and retrospect, there are two more processes in Scrum which are already outside of the sprint. So the 18th process is the ship deliverables. And this is when the completed requirements will be released to production, but prior to actual deployment to production, usually there's a UAT, and in the user's acceptance testing, if there are major or critical issues found, the bug will be included in the current sprint. And the last process would be the retrospect project. So this is when the whole project is already completed. Organizational stakeholders and Scrum core team members meet to retrospect the project, identify and document the lessons learned. Often the lessons are documented as agreed actionable improvements to be implemented in future projects. So these are the 19 processes in Scrum.